KLEK 102.5 FM, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, or our underwriters or sponsors.
KLEK 102.5 FM. Good morning to you on your Wednesday. It's June 14th, 2017. This is Community Conversations. It's the second Wednesday of the month, so it is time for our Ask the Attorney segment. We have local attorney Mr. Scott Willhite joining us in the studio today, and we're going to talk about some various legal matters. And of course, if you have a question or a comment, you can give us a call at 870-277-1080, or you can leave your questions and your comments on our Facebook live stream. So, Kubila, please start us off today.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Scott.
Good morning, Kubila. How are you?
All right. I hope we can make it through this. I'm always trying to find interesting information to help, keep the community informed and up to date on what, some of the local laws are and national laws. So today we're going to bring it back more local or stateside, I guess you can
we
say.
could talk about first is this is Flag Day.
So today's Flag Day.
Flag Day. We're celebrating, I think, since 1777, my understanding, that we adopted a flag similar to what we have. And so you might see flags out on people's front doorsteps and at civic places and things, and people may be wondering, but it's Flag Day.
Okay.
Well, certainly happy Flag Day to each and every one of you out there listening. And we don't have any flags here at the studio, but...
Okay, so I'm going to have to do some research and look up the historical facts on how that all took place. Alrighty, well, thank you for that bit of information. Alright, so I found this website, and if anyone out there listening wants to follow along, if you're not driving, go to statelaws.findlaw.com/Arkansas. And so we're going to just go through a few things. One thing we were talking about off air, which seems to be a really hot topic, is gun laws. Like, people want to own them, people want to get rid of them, people want to make the law stricter and, put a bunch of stipulations on who can own them. So let's kind of let's look at what the gun law says for Arkansas.
And we're really talking about constitutional right to bear arms first. That's the first law that we have to recognize. And then when you get down to a more state level, local level, you look at people who have been convicted of a felony lose that right.
Okay.
And then we have certain processes to try to restore that right. So that's sort of the framework we have to work within, is who is legally allowed to possess a gun and who is not.
All right, so according to the website, and I'm sorry I don't have when this was actually updated, it says Code Section 573-103-104. Okay, illegal arms are bomb or other explosive device, machine gun, sawed-off shotgun or rifle, firearms specially made or adapted for silent discharge, metal or brass knuckles, removing or altering serial mark or ID number on firearm. I would really think those would be illegal. There should be no question about any of those. Can you maybe tell us why a sawed-off shotgun, falls on the illegal list?
And I'm not a gun expert at all, but my understanding is it would be easier to conceal.
Okay.
And it would cover a broader range. It'd be easier to hurt or affect a bigger space.
Okay.
So I think those are the primary two I can think of. But any alteration of a firearm is going to be dangerous,
mm-hmm.
and
it can be dangerous for the individual using it.
Sure. And we have shotguns for hunting. Lots of people around here are duck hunters and deer hunters, and they use shotguns for that purposes. But a sawed-off shotgun is probably not going to be that valuable for hunting.
Okay.
So I'd say it may quickly alter the purpose of the use of that firearm.
Okay. Now, listed here it says who may not own convicted felons unless restored by the governor upon recommendation by the chief law enforcement officer in the applicant's jurisdiction, as long as the weapon was not used in commission of the felony, adjudicated mentally ill unless case was dismissed and expunged, and 3, committed involuntary to any mental institution, and 4, incarcerated person. So kind of help us, break down, this is convicted felon unless restored by governor.
Right. We have a process, and we've attempted in the last 3 years to make it more clear and clean, but typically, or generally, if you have to look at it, if someone is convicted of a felony,
Okay.
and a felony is a specific crime that is beyond a misdemeanor. Misdemeanors would be adjudicated in district court here in Jonesboro. That would be something that dealt with a penalty of a year or less in jail.
Okay.
So it's a more serious crime, and if someone is convicted of that crime, they're a felon. Their gun rights are taken away. Their voting rights are taken away. And so let's just say that person completes their jail sentence or their probationary sentence. Let's say it's a 3-year probation. They complete that. They pay all their fines. And now they want to go hunting, or they want to be restored to the position they were before. There is an expungement or a sealing of the record process, but it doesn't restore that person to the right to have a gun.
Okay.
It clears them of the offense, and they can tell the public or prospective employer, I never had a criminal conviction, but you cannot carry a gun. You have to actually apply to the governor, and those are pretty lengthy applications. I've filled out several for clients in the past.
Okay.
You have to obtain statements from people in the community who say this person's not a threat, maybe from your pastor, from a congressman, a local law enforcement officer. All those would be, say a sheriff, all those would be helpful.
Okay.
But you submit your application along with those attachments, and it's submitted to an office that is associated with the governor, and someone reviews those and selects certain applications to accept and to actually give clemency or pardon. It's as if it never happened, and so
Okay.
that person's rights are totally restored. But it takes
It takes some time.
it's usually I think it's an 8-year wait from the actual criminal conviction. I'd have to look at
Wow.
the petition again, but there is a formal petition you can get from the state of Arkansas. Excuse me. And after that wait period and doing all the things required for the conviction, the person has to submit that, and then it is reviewed. It is put out for public comment. You may see them in the paper occasionally saying the governor has recommended a pardon for these 3 people.
Okay.
And so it's put out for public comment, and depending on the receipt of information, that's either finalized or not. So it's a very lengthy process.
Have you ever had a successful one?
I have not,
Oh, wow. Oh.
and I don't do many. I think I've probably handled 5 to 6.
And they've been denied.
I've handled lots of expungements,
Okay.
many expungements, but that doesn't, as I said, give the gun rights. It doesn't restore those rights. But the pardon from the governor is not something that's given out very
free.
easily.
Here
Right.
you go.
You have to really have a reason.
Okay.
You have to have a valid reason. A lot of times it will be if that person was 19 years old and living a lifestyle that was totally different, and now they're 35 and they're married and they have a stable environment and really connected to the community. So it really has to be a substantial change, in my view.
Okay. Well, since you brought that up, from a lawyer's perspective, what can someone do? This is getting away from the gun laws. Like you said, they've turned their life around. They may have served some time. Now they're out. They're doing better. They're moving in a totally different direction, positive direction. What can that person do to restore their life? Okay. There was a conversation that came up Saturday during our thoughts on the matter, a comment, concerning felons. Even though they were talking about income, well, there are some people who are not able to work or not able to do certain things because they have a felony, and the felony could be, just say they wrote hot checks over a certain amount and it led to a felony. So it wasn't something violent, but unfortunately it had this dark cloud hanging over their head. So how can they go about trying to restore their life?
Step 1 in that process is an expungement.
Okay.
And it's a fairly simple process. It usually takes 30 to 45 days. It goes through the local courts. So what you do is there's a uniform petition that is also available online. You complete that petition. There is a waiting period, but it's very short.
Okay.
You submit your petition. You verify that you don't have other felonies, and you can only do this one time.
Oh.
So if you have one felony, or maybe a set of felonies from a single incident, you can have felonies from several different dates and have them expunged, but from one incident you can have felonies expunged. There's a question of whether they can be multiple felonies or just one in that incident, but at least one felony in one incident can be expunged. So say, for instance, in your scenario, a hot check charge, it results in a felony, and that would have to be a sufficient, a certain amount of money we're dealing with. So if that threshold was met, you file your petition, you see if there's any objection by the prosecuting attorney. Typically there's not, if the person has paid their fines and completed all the requirements established by the courts. So once 30 days passes and there's no objection, you go back to court and a judge signs an order sealing or expunging the record.
Okay.
And my understanding, I've never worked in the clerk's office. We could ask probably Candace Edwards, who's our local circuit clerk, but my understanding is they physically take the file and put it inside some sort of jacket or folder, so you can't get access to it unless the court orders it. But it's supposed to be a situation where it's as if that felony never happened.
Okay.
Now, we all know that the internet has lots of information. Okay?
Yes.
And so let's just say that person who went through the expungement process wants to get a job. That's usually a stumbling block in getting a job, is I've been convicted of a felony. That person wants to say to the prospective employer, no, I've never been convicted of a felony. This law, the expungement law, is supposed to do that. But here's the catch. If there's a internet search done on that person, I don't know that we can take that information off the internet.
No.
So while the file is sealed, at the courthouse, the internet may show that that person was charged and convicted of a felony. So
there's trails and trails and
Sure.
I mean, so many sources and sites. So it's I'm going to say virtually impossible to remove every piece of information off the internet.
right. And so the first step to your answer to your question is get an expungement.
Okay.
Under the current law in Arkansas. That's step one.
Okay.
And then that person, as we said, can go further and get a governor's pardon if they want to go completely and get that to be exonerated totally.
Alrighty then. Alright, you're tuned in to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We're speaking with Scott Willhite, our local attorney. Today is Ask the Attorney Day. If you have any questions or comments, please give us a call at 870-277-1080 or drop us a message on our Facebook live stream. We'll be happy to address your question or comment on the air, unless it's something personal, and we'll address it off the air. Alrighty, and today we're talking about various Arkansas laws. We just touched a little bit on the Arkansas gun laws, or so I say gun laws. If you would like more information, go to statelaws.findlaw.com/Arkansas, and you can find a variety of links that goes into, and it breaks it down into categories: criminal laws, statutes and limitations, accidents, business, consumer education. I mean, there's so many, and then there's many more subcategories under those major categories. Okay, so let's talk about something that's in your area of practice. Is it family or accidental? Which one want to go with?
I do a lot of work with people who have accidents, whether it's workers' comp, personal injury, things of that sort. I do a lot of that. I do some family law issues, but primarily I deal with personal injury, workers' compensation, criminal defense, estates, guardianships, things of that sort.
Let's talk about civil rights laws. That's something that we see popping up in and out of the news, and not trying to cause any controversy or there are times that people feel that sometimes the police, different areas, overuse their power, or some people feel like they were mistreated in a job situation, or there are a variety of situations where people feel that their civil rights have been violated. They maybe go to protest or go somewhere to do something, and then they're turned away, or they're whatever the case may be, there's all types of situations where civil rights can be violated. So, can we talk a little bit about
Sure.
that?
And the one I see the most is when you're talking about, and I view it from a discriminatory practices, because I do a lot of employment-related issues. So, for instance, someone has an issue at a job, and they're, I'm usually in a situation where someone's treated privately differently as opposed to the government interfering. Now, we see the government allegedly interfering with people's rights usually in the criminal setting.
Okay.
So if say there's a search of your home, say officers knock on your door and want to search your home, there's got to be a valid reason.
Okay.
There's got to be probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed. There's certain requirements that have to be met there. Sometimes there has to be a search warrant unless it's an emergency. So that's where in criminal law setting we see that is in the search and seizure, or when you're stopped. Let's just say you're driving down the road, you have a taillight out,
Okay.
and an officer stops you, and then he wants to look in your vehicle.
Okay.
Is there sufficient cause to allow him to do that
Okay.
when he just stopped you for a taillight out? Those are all fact-driven issues
Okay.
that every single aspect of that stop has to be reviewed.
Okay.
And so those are things that we sit in my office when a client comes in and we talk about, and I have to make very detailed notes to see whether I think we can move to have that, say, that stop or that search deemed to be excessive or
Okay.
illegal. But
Okay.
those are constitutional issues we deal with in that criminal setting. Civil setting, I said earlier, is if someone's terminated. Let's just say someone is working at a business here in town and they're terminated and they're not given a reason. We're typically in Arkansas, you don't have to have a reason. You can be terminated for
Really?
any reason as long as it's not discriminatory.
Oh.
It can't be a discriminatory practice. This is a employee at will state, so you're free to quit and they're free to fire you in the normal setting unless it's a discriminatory practice. And so we sort of run down a list of reasons you cannot fire somebody.
Okay.
And there's gender, there's age, there's race, there's religion, there's disability status, there's various protections people have. And so I see that scenario a lot, especially with workers' comp situations. Someone has an accident at work and suddenly they're fired, and they come to me and say, can they do that? Can they fire me?
Oh, wow.
So those are the issues I typically see regarding civil rights.
Okay.
I don't see as much of the traditional issues that we would think of as the civil rights that we've sort of hopefully moved away from in the 60s and early 70s. And then maybe in bigger cities we see, might see more of that, but I see it more in the workplace, and then when the police are interacting with people and when employers are interacting with people.
Okay. Do you have a question? Okay. Alrighty, so I wanted
Michael's being amused today.
I just want to read this one statement. It says, what we collectively call civil rights are the rights of everyone in a particular jurisdiction, usually either state or federal, to be protected equally under that jurisdiction's laws. Okay. Another thing I've seen. Okay, we talked about traffic stops, and Chief Elliott was going to try to get into this the last time he was here, but we ran out of time talking about different crime statistics. Something happens, you get pulled over. Some people feel that they are at a disadvantage because, say, the officer, someone who works for the city or the state, will have more powerful people on their side versus just an everyday civilian. So how do you try to help reassure your clients that, okay, I'm going to do the best that I can for you. I'm on your side. Well, I'm working for you, no matter who they have in their pocket to work for them.
And typically what I have to look at there is that I've got a judge who is hopefully impartial,
Okay.
that I can go to if I think things were not done properly. And the great thing is we have a lot of great officers in this town, in this state, and you don't see abuses very often. But there are allegations of abuse, and there are situations where there is abuse. So what we have to do in my line of work is I have to listen to my client's statement and then get a statement from the officer and figure out what really happened.
Okay.
Because inevitably it's a very emotional situation
Yes,
when someone is stopped. So
Okay.
are we taking a break here now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. You're tuned in to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM, and we're getting ready to head to our first break, but stay tuned. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back after these announcements.
You're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We'll be right back.
Are the disagreements in your marriage constantly escalating into full-blown fights? I'm Mark Merrill with today's Family Minute. Every marriage is full of tough decisions that sometimes lead couples to disagree, but you can disagree in a kind and loving way. So here are 3 agreeable ways to disagree with your spouse. First, disagree with affirmation. Start off well by validating their position and by finding common ground with your spouse. Second, disagree with kindness. Disagreements are much more effective when each spouse agrees to use kind words, words that build up, not tear down. Third, disagree with love. Be sure to always have your spouse's best interest at heart when talking through a disagreement. Remember, your family first. Want to learn more about today's topic? Download my podcast at markmerrill.com.
Hello, this is your girl Allie J, and I want everyone to join me for Kick It With a Cancer. My birthday bash going down June 23rd at Legends Barbecue Smokehouse, 1025 West Johnson Avenue, across from Riceland Foods in Jonesboro. This party is going to be an all-ages affair from 7 to 10 o'clock p.m., and I'm letting all cancers in free until 8:30 p.m. with ID. Music by DJ Mr. Chew. To celebrate my birthday, I'm going to make it easy on your pockets, too. Just $5 to get in for adults, $3 if you're 13 and 17, and kids 12 and under get in free. I told you it's an all-ages family affair, and you know you want to be there, right? And just because it's my birthday, I'm giving away presents to some lucky guests. So come kick it with a cancer June 23rd at Legends Barbecue Smokehouse, 1025 West Johnson Avenue from 7 to 10 p.m. This is a KLEK fundraiser.
Meineke of Jonesboro is now Stark's Auto Service, a full-service auto repair and vehicle maintenance center offering engine and transmission repair, brake service, tires, oil changes, and more, performed by ASE certified mechanics. The all-new Stark's Auto Service, 2813 South Caraway Road in Jonesboro, 870-204-7112. Stark's Auto Service, Jonesboro.com.
When a woman gives her all to her boyfriend, she is hopeful about the future. Marriage was in her future plans until she received some shocking news. Now with her dream shattered and life altered, she has to pick up the pieces and move forward. It was in this experience that she realized that love has no protection. KLEK 102.5 and Massey Production presents the inspirational gospel stage play, Love Has No Protection, a story that will inspire you, renew, and reaffirm your faith. Featuring performers from all over Arkansas, Texas, and Louisiana, 7 p.m. Saturday, June 24th at the Arkansas State University Student Union. Tickets are $10 in advance, $15 at the door, and can be purchased at KLEK, Cool Cuts, and online at www.klekfm.org or by calling 870-277-1080. Bring the entire family Saturday, June 24th to the Arkansas State University Student Union to see Love Has No Protection, the inspirational gospel stage play, 7 p.m. This event is a KLEK fundraiser.
Just added a special 3 o'clock p.m. matinee show. That's right, now it's going to be 2 shows, 3 o'clock p.m. and 7 o'clock p.m. The hit gospel stage play, Love Has No Protection, coming to the ASU Student Union Centennial Hall, June 24th. Don't miss it.
Hey, what's up, Jonesboro? This is Hezekiah Walker. I'm so blessed to be on the radio here at KLEK 102.5 FM. Join me for the Hezekiah Walker Show every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 10 o'clock a.m. right after Community Conversations, and every Wednesday night right after your local church Bible study at 8 o'clock p.m. Jonesboro, join me, Hezekiah Walker, and give every praise to our God on KLEK 102.5 FM.
Hezekiah Walker. It's the Hezekiah Walker Show.
Do you like the music you hear on KLEK 102.5 FM? Do you like the educational programming that we provide? Do you like the service we provide to the community? Do you like having a station to finally call your own that represents you? If so, please stop by or call any of our underwriters or sponsors that you hear on KLEK and tell them thank you for their support. The support of our underwriters and sponsors is vital for us to stay on the air. So be sure to let them know that you thank them for their support.
And now back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
And we're back on Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. This is our Ask the Attorney Day. We have local attorney Scott Willhite joining us in the studio. We've been talking about a variety of issues, and of course you have a question or a comment, you can give us a call at 870-277-1080. Once again, the phone number is 870-277-1080, or you can weigh in on our Facebook live stream.
All right, so when we went to break, we were talking about different civil rights, I guess, issues that may come up, but we don't want to spend too much time, but we do want people to understand you do have rights. They are protected. It's just a matter of getting both sides of the story, or all sides of the story too, whatever the case may be. And hopefully having a judge who is willing to listen and be nonpartisan and make the best decision possible for that case.
You know what I think would be a good practice for everyone is to do something that might be a little tedious, but I think would be very informative, is get sort of a synopsis of the Constitution. You know, the Constitution is the ultimate law of our land.
Okay.
You don't have to read all the statutes and things and to be advised of generally what to do if you were stopped by the police, but the Constitution, if you just generally understand a few of the provisions, I think you could understand what rights you have. You know, you have a right to an obligation to comply with officers under Arkansas law under certain circumstances, but you also have right to be free of searches and seizures, is the way the Constitution words it, that are unreasonable. So you do, you know, it's sort of a give and a take. We have to give up some freedoms to be in a society where we can all coexist. I mean, you know, you think about it in this way, is you have rights and I have rights, but what happens if those rights clash? Let's just say you like your music loud and you're my neighbor and I have some sort of hearing issue that I can't take that. You know, who wins? So we have to have some laws to protect you and to protect me.
Yes, sir. I dealt with that last night. One of my neighbors decided at 1 o'clock in the morning they wanted to have a block party. I mean, granted it was okay music, but at the same time it was 1 o'clock in the morning.
You weren't jamming with them?
I was trying to get my snooze on at 1 o'clock.
Well, that's why we have laws, is because people have freedoms. We want people to have freedoms as much as possible, but if your freedom affects mine, we have to figure out where to draw the line.
Yes, most definitely.
And safety is always, you know, for instance, we have speeding limits. If you're driving down the road, you can't go more than a certain number of miles an hour. That's a safety issue for the general public, you know, but it's the freedoms that we all enjoy, is how do we ensure that each person enjoys those freedoms as much as possible.
And you know, I have had this conversation with my son concerning the speeding limit. Well, you're allowed to go 5 miles out. The speeding limit is there for a reason. You know, if you're going so many miles over, the police will stop you. They are justified to stop you. So maybe we need to ask Chief about some of those unwritten laws that people think they know or have just used to justify their actions on why they do what they do. And I do want to let people know, if you would like to take a look at the Constitution, which I really think everyone should. Yes, there's a lot to decipher. Take it bit by bit.
Or even a synopsis. Maybe there's probably lots of websites that can give people a layman's version of the constitutional provisions.
Okay.
If you spent 10 minutes and looked through the constitutional provisions, you would have a much greater understanding of the issues that our government faces when it deals with people, and that people face when they deal with the government.
Okay, and look at those Bill of Rights and see what you are entitled to and how you are to be treated in this country. Even though that's another story for another day, people are going to still have their own thoughts and views on this, that, and whatever. So we're going to move on from that. But I would like to advise everybody to please read for yourself and take notes and decipher what it means for you and your family, or just you as an individual. So when you are in a situation where you need the law on your side, you're educated and equipped with the knowledge to help you in whatever the situation is. Let me ask you this from a lawyer's perspective. Do you like it or appreciate when your client comes in with a little bit of knowledge of the law, but then on the flip side, when they have some knowledge that is not useful to the case?
I think more so, I enjoy when my client knows a little bit of the law when they're in the circumstance,
okay,
so that they act somewhat in accordance with the law. A lot of times I'm faced with, it's not. I don't call wordsmithing or trying to stretch the truth or anything, but we're trying to determine what words mean, what phrases mean, what laws mean, because they're not always clear.
Mm-hmm.
And so having a general understanding of what the law is, so that I can have a reasonable argument. This is what my client was doing. This is what they believed it was right.
Okay.
Is helpful. Now, if they come in my office and they think they know what the law is, but they're not quite on point, that makes it more difficult, because we have to start from not square one. We have to start in sort of a -3, and get back to even first.
What about a situation, because you have situations where attorneys may get into situations and then they hire attorneys to represent them. So what happens in a situation like that where you're actually representing another attorney on a case? And have you ever had that happen and butted heads?
I think it happens pretty regularly. Attorneys are sued, for malpractice, for various things, more so today than 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Okay.
And I would think that would be the most difficult client, is having an attorney as a client. I've never represented another attorney, but there are people that specialize in that and do a lot of that work. But it changes the dynamics for sure.
Okay.
It makes the conversation more difficult. And if that person is most attorneys, I think, are pretty
headstrong,
type A personality, headstrong. I don't fall in that category, I don't think, but most know what they're talking about, whether it's true or not.
Are they allowed to represent themselves in certain cases?
You can always represent yourself.
What about a non-attorney?
You can always represent yourself, no matter if you're an attorney or not. Now, you probably have seen news reports or seen TV programs where a judge appoints an attorney.
Okay.
I think ultimately, though, the individual has to accept that.
Okay.
You have a right, if you want to proceed without an attorney. In a criminal setting, it makes it extremely difficult, because you've got constitutional rights that you have to understand and you have to waive. If you're going to go what we call pro se, that means on your own. And I think it's more problematic for a judge if the person does not have an attorney and does not hire that attorney, because they have to make sure that person really understands what they're doing, really understands the process. Because if you give an individual a sentence, say 20 years in the pen, and they come back later and say, well, I didn't understand this or that about the process, they may have an appeal issue, and we start all over.
Micah?
I wanted to know, what is necessary, say for instance, if someone, hypothetically speaking, if someone was injured during an arrest or doing any type of routine check, how would that go as far as any civil suit or further action from there?
Usually, there certainly can be a civil suit against the municipality or state, who say it's a state police. You can sue the state. Typically, municipalities are immune unless they have insurance or unless it's a civil rights violation. Mm-hmm. And it usually has to be a use of excessive force to meet that test. Mm-hmm. It can't just be an accident. Those typically don't give rise to any situation where there's compensation. But use of excessive force, let's just say during an arrest, excessive force is used and someone breaks their leg or something. There's usually a suit that results if someone wants to pursue it under those circumstances.
And now the age of video cameras, and some officers are equipped with body cams and their vehicles have cameras, so there's somebody somewhere watching, or if they're at a store, depending on where they are, there may be security footage from the place of business. So there's always, I know there's a lot of stuff, a lot of evidence that attorneys, judges, and whoever else is a part of that team have to decipher through. God bless you all, because I would not want to be a part of that. Having to make a decision about somebody's life and the outcome of something that you have a lot of evidence, but it's not a lot of substantial evidence.
Yeah, that's probably the most difficult scenario that I deal with, is if I've got a criminal case where I really don't think the person, and it's not my job to determine guilt or innocence as their attorney. It's my job to represent them and give them make sure they have a fair trial, make sure that evidence is presented that they choose, do that. But if you think in your heart that person did not commit it, but there's enough risk that if they were convicted, they would spend a lot of time in jail. Mm-hmm. That's a difficult scenario, because I never tell my clients, take this offer or, go to trial. I give them the option and say, here's what I think may happen, and you have to decide if you want to take this risk. Mm-hmm. But when that risk is so great, I'm going to spend 20 years in jail if I go to trial, or maybe I've been given a plea deal where I spend a year in jail. But I don't really think the person did it. That's a hard scenario. What do you do?
So when someone takes a plea deal, it's almost like you're saying, I did it.
Almost.
Just to get a lesser sentence.
Right.
Just to satisfy the prosecutor's desires, whatever their request.
Right, because every single person involved probably has a different opinion of what may happen. The prosecutor thinks they can convict the person and send them to jail for 20 years, so they think they're doing the person a favor. I'm thinking if the person really, and I never know if the person really committed the crime or not, usually. Very seldom do I know.
Mm-hmm. Has anyone ever confessed to you?
I've had clients that tell me, here's what happened. But you can't put them on the stand after that. You cannot commit perjury and allow that person to testify that they did not do it if you know they did. So it's not that I intentionally avoid it. It's just most people don't confess like that.
Some people are master manipulators.
True.
And there we have a couple Facebook shout-outs. Shout out to David Nunez and Amy Cook Willhite.
All right.
That reminds me a lot of that one movie, Law-Abiding Citizen, when he represented himself. But of course he had underlying motives. So
did he end up killing himself in the end, or he did something?
You gotta watch it again.
I am gonna have to watch it again. I know he was a bad guy. He ended up being a bad guy, but.
And Scott, while we're on this topic, you mentioned about how a person may feel that they are guilty or really not guilty, or the prosecutor offering deals. Can you explain to the listeners the Alfred plea, because that's kind of what happened in the West Memphis 3 case, and how those 3 gentlemen were eventually released?
And I don't know the details of that plea, to be quite honest.
Alfred?
But, the original case resulted in a conviction.
Oh, Alfred.
Okay? And so I know they spent a number of years incarcerated. And my understanding is there was a question about the appeal process, and they may be awarded a new trial. And in order to avoid that possibility, they entered a plea where they got credit for time served, for, they got a sentence, so that whatever time would be necessary had already been served. So they would be released. Now, the details of that, I don't know the details. I've never seen the details.
But what in general is an Alford plea?
Yeah, that's a new term for me, to be quite honest.
Right here it says the Alford guilt in his ALFORD guilty plea is named after the United States Supreme Court case in North Carolina versus Alford, 1970. Henry Alford had been indicted on a charge of first-degree murder in 1963. Evidence in the case included testimony from witnesses that Alford had said after the victim's death that he had killed the individual. Court testimony showed that Alford and the victim had argued at the victim's house. Alford left the house, and afterwards the victim received a fatal gunshot wound when he opened the door responding to a knock. And then it goes into a lot more detail about him facing capital punishment charges, and he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. There's a lot more information here, and it goes into a longer detail on the definition of what it is. So basically, this man agreed to something he later said he didn't do. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, I think what we're getting to is when you typically enter a guilty plea, you're saying, I did it. Okay, because a judge will require you in entering a plea to say, tell me what you did. For instance, if you're possessing marijuana, you have to say, I went over here and I bought some marijuana and I had it, But in an Alford plea, I'm assuming what this is, and it looks like I've just pulled up on the internet, you don't admit to the guilt. It's almost as if you're doing a no contest plea. Mm-hmm. You're not saying I did anything, but it gets the case resolved and finalized. To be quite honest, I have never in felony court seen that done. That may have been the only time. If it was entered in the West Memphis 3 case, that's the only time I'm familiar or have heard of it being done.
Well, I guess even at this stage you can still learn something. Didn't mean to put you on the spotlight.
No, that's okay. And believe me, the practice of law is really that. The practice, you learn something every day. Every time you try a case, you learn something. Every time you're in court, you usually learn something. But in every guilty plea or plea deal that I've entered into in felony court, one of the parts is not only do you fill out paperwork saying I'm guilty, I understand my rights, I give them up. You go before a judge, and the judge doesn't ask me as an attorney. He asks my client, Mr. So-and-so, tell me what you did. And then he asks me, Mr. Willhite, are there facts and circumstances sufficient to form a basis for this guilty plea? And I have to listen to what the person said they did and say, yes, Judge, there are. Now, I've had circumstances where we've made a deal and the person still says to me, I didn't do it. And so when he gets in front of the judge, he goes, well, I'm not sure that and the judge says, okay, I won't accept the guilty plea.
Okay.
And so what happens then?
We have to start all over. We either have to go back in front of the judge with a more firm commitment to say, yes, this is what I did, or we go to trial.
Mike?
I just wanted to touch bases on the order that the Supreme Court put in place of the stay execution in Arkansas, having to do with the drugs being expired or soon to be expired. How did that work out? How did that come about? Weren't the drugs, I guess, kept accordingly?
That's a good question. I think probably every person who's interested in the death penalty or politics in Arkansas wants to know that, because it's such an extremely important issue.
Mm-hmm.
At that stage, from the stage someone gets convicted and given a death sentence, even before that stage, the trial that leads up to that, the sentencing, everything has to be done exactly according to the law. You can't deviate one iota, 1 inch, or there's an appeal. You've heard of appeals that last 10, 15, 20 years. People be on death row for that long. It's because every aspect of the case has to be done perfectly. And you know, as well as I do, nothing is done perfectly. We're humans. We just make mistakes, and we have to deal with that. And you know, when you're dealing with someone's life, ending it, there's so much pressure on the commitment to detail and doing things exactly right. But that would seem to be something that would be easily fixed. That I don't know how they obtain those, but you know, you would think that. Let me just back up and say, maybe because there hadn't been an execution in a while, there was some lapse. I don't even know who oversees the retention of those kinds of medications, but they're not used often. Mm-hmm. We know that. Mm-hmm. And so, but you would think before there was an order to execute someone in that manner, that there would be an evaluation. Is this process legal? Is it constitutional? You know.
Mm-hmm. And how long would that stay of execution be in place until they finish the case or start it over?
Well, the Supreme Court entered the order, and until another order is issued by the Supreme Court, it'll remain in place.
And with that, we're going to get ready to go to break. This is the Ask the Attorney Day with local attorney Scott Willhite. Still taking your questions and your comments on our Facebook live stream, or you can give us a call at 870-277-1080. Once again, that phone number is 870-277-1080. We will be back after these announcements. This is KLEK 102.5 FM.
You're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We'll be right back.
We're back with Money Matters. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. Your number one savings goal is to establish an emergency fund to be touched only in case of unemployment, needed car repairs, or anything else tied to your ability to earn income. Without this fund, which should equal at least 6 months of your living expenses, you'll likely resort to more desperate and costly measures to cope, including using your credit cards and even dipping into your retirement fund. But once you commit to building this fund, what steps should you take? First, automate the process as much as possible. Have at least 10% of your paycheck automatically transferred to your emergency fund every payday. Set a specific savings goal. You need to know how much 6 months of your living expenses is to the penny. Or you can go with half of your annual pre-tax income as a goal. Don't worry about earning interest. The point of the fund is not return on investment, it's having ready access to cash in case of emergency. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. for Money Matters, a product of American Urban Radio Networks.
Money Matters is made possible by the Jonesboro Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, a nonprofit organization dedicated to uncompromising commitment to communities, service, leadership, empowerment. www.jonesboroalumnidst.org.
Money Matters is brought to you by Bancorp South, offering checking, savings, loans, credit cards, and wealth management. 5 locations in Jonesboro to serve you. www.bancorpsouth.com or 870-972-9800.
The Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated was established on January 1st, 1977, originally serving Blytheville, Arkansas, and now serving Jonesboro, Blytheville, Osceola, Marion, and West Memphis, Arkansas. Today, the chapter continues to make an impact by focusing on Alpha's national community outreach initiatives such as My Brother's Keeper, A Voteless People is a Hopeless People, Go to High School, Go to College, Project Alpha, Boy Scouts, and the March of Dimes. The Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is committed to Alpha's mission of developing leaders, promoting brotherhood and academic excellence, while providing service and advocacy to the community. More information about the Mu Omicron Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is available at MOL Alphas on Facebook or via email at molalphas@gmail.com.
Arkansas Early Learning is accepting applications right now for childcare. We have locations all across Northeast Arkansas. Applications online at arearlylearning.org. That's arearlylearning.org. Right here in the community at no cost. Arkansas Early Learning, offering kids a head start.
Arkansas Early Learning is a nonprofit organization.
Support for KLEK is brought to you by
Fullness of Joy Ministries, 2120 Thorn Street, Jonesboro, under the direction of Bishop Adrian Rogers and co-pastor Susan Rogers. www.fjministries.org.
And now back to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM.
And we're back on Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. This is Community Conversations, and this is our Ask the Attorney segment with local attorney Scott Willhite. And we've been talking about a variety of issues, and I'm going to kind of just wrap up what we've been talking about today.
So today we started with some Arkansas laws. We kind of veered off way into a whole other. We took a lot of different detours on this.
But that's all right, though.
Discussion, but I hope that everyone out there listening and watching has gotten something out of what we've talked about and has been inspired to do more research for themselves concerning what the law says. Look up the laws for your state. People used to, what was that term about being ignorant?
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Yes. Now with so much access to, internet, there's so much there's access to so much information. I'm sorry.
It's at your fingertips.
Yes. So no one has the right. I don't want to use the word. No one can say they just don't know. They have access. If you have a phone that has internet or you're somewhere near Wi-Fi, you can pull up a website, Google almost anything you want. We have a local library that has books on top of books.
Shout out to Brandy.
So we have a town full of lawyers. I mean, I'm sure someone can give you 5 or 10 minutes of maybe some free time just to answer 1 or 2 brief questions that will help you on your research. I'm sorry.
I remember one thing in particular that you mentioned, to make sure that we look up and read our constitutions, and even if we have to look it up and, I guess read it in layman terms, that will give us a greater understanding of our rights. And
well, it's where all of our laws emanate or come from. That's the basis, so that's the starting point. And I took 2 classes in constitutional law when I was in law school, but to take 30 minutes and review generally what the Constitution says, what the Bill of Rights says, I think would be great for anybody who has any interest in how they deal with the government.
Okay.
If they have any questions about how do I deal with governmental officials, the police, that will give them a start.
One piece of advice on Friday when Dr. Patricia Walls was here, she's a social work professor. She was talking to us about how she advises her students about learning policy when they go into certain workplaces or different, whatever the scenario is. Get that policy manual, read it front to back, learn those policies and procedures so that when you're faced with a challenge, your employer can't treat you any kind of way, or certain things won't be allowed to happen because you have the knowledge of how things are supposed to go. So same thing in the real world. Learn the laws as much as you can, or policies as they're so called.
Most issues that I deal with where someone has an employment dispute, they'll come in my office and they'll say, my employer did this.
Okay.
And my first question is always, do they have a policy manual? A policy and procedure. Well, yeah. I say, have you looked at it? No. I say, well, let's get that. Let's look at it, and let's see if the employer has said how they will handle this situation. For instance, a termination. They may have a right to a grievance process where they appeal the issue and go to a different group of people who might say, well, no, we don't want to fire that person. We want to keep them. So, yeah, it's always good to know the laws you're dealing with. What are the rules? When we were kids, if we played a game, it's the first thing you did. You had to know what the rules were. If you're playing baseball, you got to know there's 3 strikes and 4 balls and 3 outs, and
that's right.
You have to know the rules, and so that's generally where we start, is the Constitution or the policy manual for our employer.
And some people are so quick to want to jump out in life without knowing all the rules, but then when they feel like they're violated, they cause such a ruckus, and they don't have anything to back up their claim.
Right.
I've been learning a lot about that in my law and ethics communications course, and sometimes when things seem to be ethically wrong, is not necessarily legally wrong. So.
Oh wow.
Well, history is full of examples of that.
Oh my goodness, it's an interesting topic. I'm going to touch on that another time. Things that are unethical, but at the same time they're legal. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe that might be another topic for another day.
And that gets into whose ethics are we dealing with?
Oh, wow.
Are they yours or mine or someone else's? And
This is true.
That's always a subjective determination.
Okay, that's going to be a topic over some coffee or some wine. I know it's only 9 o'clock. It's in the morning. Sorry.
Well, Michael, you mentioned you're taking a law and ethics class. I'd be interested in knowing what are some of the things that you learned out of it.
I've learned a lot. Right now, I'm covering mostly the freedom of speech and the offenses that come from that, and kind of like how harassment is handled, and if a common person will be affected by this rather than a majority, and so forth.
That's going to be a show. We're going to put that on the books.
Yeah.
We're definitely
First
going to put that on
Amendment
the
show.
books.
I agree.
Well, Mrs. Scott, we can't thank you enough for stopping by, and thank you for indulging me as always.
It was my pleasure.
With my myriad of
Enjoyed
questions. I would say potpourri of questions. All right.
Legal potpourri. I think there may have actually been a site or something out there that was called that at one time. Don't quote me on that.
So, any other advice you would like to give anybody that's out there listening, or
any final comments?
I would say read your Constitution. If you have questions, contact a lawyer, because the Constitution is hard to understand.
Yes.
We study it, usually every week, every month, as we need to, and it's still it's an evolving discussion.
Okay. Alrighty.
And I think one of the biggest things is, you're trying to figure out what the framers were thinking at the time that they wrote it. And I'll just use this quick example since we talked about guns earlier. Obviously when they created the Second Amendment, they had muskets that, you had to pour the gunpowder in, push the ball in and ram it down and fire one shot. If they had foreseen in the future that you had guns that could shoot 100 rounds in 1 minute, would they have put restrictions in, or would they just still said, okay, you have unlimited access to guns no matter what? And I guess that's up to the Supreme Court, to try to get into the minds of the framers and try to interpret the law according to how they would see it. And it will probably be like that for the remainder of the life of this country.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's what our judicial process is interpreting those laws.
Alrighty.
Well, once again, thank each and every one of you for tuning in. May each and one of you have a great and blessed day. This is KLEK 102.5 FM.